No. Okay. I'm not on campus tomorrow.
I do.
Where?
Yeah.
I didn't send you my office hours.
No.
I'll send you.
Did you get it?
Send you my office hours this week.
All right.
Come see me sometime if you need to.
Sounds
You
good.
don't, I think I'm ready for a summer's worth of work. Yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks. That is a compliment.
I think that's the kindest wish.
I mean, I was just thinking that,
I would wish for nothing more.
and the semester thing, actually. Not to the meeting, I was referring to here.
I got a lot of suggestions, those are technical learning, how we can make the website better. So we're working with it. Rating on the school website, oh my gosh.
Uncharted levels right there.
You get those letter friends.
You ready, Emily? Our next talk will be Emily Stumme on website usability and user experience.
So I'm Emily Stumme. I did website usability and user experience, and I was mentored by Alan Davis. So I'm going to start with a quote that I found. It's by Hasenhall, and it says, "Design for pleasure rather than the absence of pain." And this is kind of what I took into a good design for websites, and it will kind of be apparent throughout the presentation. So to start off, usability is a really big key to websites. Usability is a verification tool, so it basically tests whether or not you can actually complete a task that you're given. So it's very a yes-no answer, and it's a very well-defined terminology. As we can say, it's basically, can you complete this task, yes or no? And it is a fundamental property for website success. Obviously, if your users cannot complete a task that you're trying to have them complete, then your web application or website is not going to be successful. User experience, however, is not nearly as successful. So I have 3 definitions up here of user experience. The first one is by law, and it says, user experience highlights non-utilitarian aspects of such interactions, shifting the focus to user effect, sensation, and the meaning as well as values of such interactions in everyday life. So it basically kind of turns a website into a person and makes these interactions kind of clear. The second one is by Wimmel and Wackel, and it says it is commonly understood as a non-instrumental emotional response to an interaction. And it seems weird to have kind of an emotional reaction to a website, but these emotions are probably either a positive or negative feeling after completing a task on the website. And the third one really kind of describes the ambiguity of user experience, and this is by Ferlizzi. And it says user experience is associated with a wide variety of meanings ranging from traditional usability to beauty, hedonic, effective, and experiential aspects of technology use. So it kind of covers basically everything. So there's not really a good consensus on what user experience is. Usability versus user experience, they're actually not the same thing and are often lumped into the same category. Usability, like I said earlier, is a verification tool. It's a yes-no answer, while user experience is very much, how do you feel about this? What do you think about it? What are the emotions you're getting? And they must be tested differently. So oftentimes people try to lump it all together in one question, and it's basically, can you do this? Yes or no? And that's really not testing the experience, it's more testing usability. And one does not imply the other. So having a high usability does not mean that the experience is high. Very rarely is usability going to be low and your user experience going to be high, but they cannot be correlated between the two. And so we're now in a kind of generation where we have a very large technological gap. We have a generation who knows life before computers were in the home and before touch and responsive, and we have a generation of kids who don't even know life before smartphones and iPads and stuff like that. So understanding that there is this huge user base that doesn't understand the difference and that they need to know what your technological abilities are. So we have to know the user's technological abilities to really understand how to design websites and other applications for their use. So designing and developing is a huge key into designing and developing websites. And this goes into a lot of factors. So thinking if you add a new feature to a web page or an application, making sure that these features are either going to enhance or if they're going to add a problem. And writing those pros and cons to make sure that you're always trying to provide the best user experience. Clean designs are better than cluttered designs. You don't want to go to a web page, have 4 videos, 8 pictures, bright text yelling at you, because that's just going to drive the user away and really just overwhelm them. So this, having clean designs are going to be better and draw the users in. You have to understand the user's end goal. Knowing what a user is trying to get out of your web application or your website will only help you be able to design to make sure that those goals are easily able to be completed. Overall look and feel is just slightly more important than content. This is because that the users are first going to look at your site before they're going to read it. So making sure that those look and feel, and what I mean by look and feel is visual designs, is going to be more important because that's going to draw the user and the content's going to keep them there. And so responsive pages is a new thing for web, and it's making sure that web is accessible by many different platforms. You can access it on a computer, a desktop, your phone, a tablet. And there's very many different screen size. So being able to be responsive and consistent across all those different platforms will only raise the usability and user experience for users. So expectations, all users go in with some sort of expectations, and these are heuristics that we use pretty much subconsciously. So mostly when you go to a website, in the top left corner, sometimes the top right, you'll see a logo or the name of the brand that you're looking at. Top right tends to have search bars. If you go to look at a job posting, you're usually going to scroll down to the bottom right corner in the footer, because that's where the job listings are. And understanding this, we'll understand how we, where we can put the information best so that the users are going to see it. So you don't really want your information in the bottom right corner. Nobody's really going to make it there. And then there's a couple things like colors mean certain things. Red's going to mean error, emergency, or stuff like that, or exit. Focus groups are one of the key parts to designing a good website. These are making sure these focus groups are diverse across many different parameters. This includes technology experience, age, amount of time they spend on the website, what kind of platforms they use. Having this diverse focus group, giving feedback throughout the design and development process will help along the way, so you don't get to a final product and then the users are like, yeah, we don't like this. So making sure that they're constantly being updated and giving feedback will help. So what I did is I designed an experiment. I created 2 websites that we're about to see, and I based it off of past studies and books about user experience and how to make it more usable and a higher user experience for users. I did A/B testing, which is a control site and an experimental site. Site A, which we're about to see, is the user-friendly site. Site B is a non-user-friendly site. So this is Site A, and we're going to get into the kind of different components of it, but this is just the overall. And then this is Site B, and then we're just about to break it down into different pieces. So the key differences, one of them I mentioned was content. Site A is on the left, Site B is on your right. So content is different in this page. Usually less is more for content. However, you want to make sure that users are getting somewhat of description. So all these underlined sentences are links out, and so users liked being able to see just a little description of what they would possibly be linking out to in case it was an external site or they're going to have to leave and come back. And that way they're not going somewhere and then retreating back, making sure they know what they're doing. Another difference was layout. Site A is on the top again. So you can see the gray bar has moved. The gray bar is a navigational bar. And so moving that gray bar up on the B site, when people had scrolled down to read the content, they often lost the gray bar, also lost that navigational tool. And Site B also has a left nav, which we will get to. So navigational tools. So they both have a gray bar. Site A on the top has a hover nav, so people are able to see the site structure, which allows them to see all the different options before having to dig deep into the pages. Site B has a double nav. So the gray bar does not have that hover tool. You cannot see the structure of the site. What happens is this yellow bar will change based on the structure of the site, kind of trapping you in if you can't figure out how to get back. And like I said earlier, that gray bar kind of disappears as you scroll down, so they can't see that as well. and some naming conventions. So there's a couple of switches of how links were named and kind of the content that you thought it would provide. So that kind of threw people off, weren't sure exactly what the page was going to give them. So here you can see office guide and contact, slightly different pages. So I had 3 hypotheses. Site A will be perceived as much more user-friendly and easier to use as opposed to Site B, and that Site A would be chosen to have a better visual layout and content as opposed to Site B, and that users would report a feeling of familiarity or intuitiveness on one of the 2 sites, but not both. So my methods were that I had 22 participants. They were all students, staff, and faculty from the college, and they were recruited by an email. And so all testing occurred on a Windows 7 machine. A couple were performed on a Windows 8 machine using the Google Chrome browser. And so participants were invited to move freely about a website. They were assigned either to start with Site A or Site B, and that was completely random and counterbalanced. So I had 11 participants start with Site A, 11 participants start with Site B, so that wouldn't throw off any of the results. And they were given a list of 4 tasks to complete, and they went through these tasks. Once they completed the 4 tasks on either Site A or Site B, they did the opposite of what they did before. And then they filled out a final questionnaire, and they were observed by me throughout this entire process. So these were the 4 tasks that they had to complete. They're very, very simple tasks cognitively to understand and see. This was more testing of the layout and the different features that were going on. And this was the task questionnaire. So this scaling question about how easy did you find it to complete the task allowed for a usability testing. This gave me a very yes, no, I could complete it kind of reading. Whereas the second question, was there anything that could be added or changed to make it easier to complete the task? If so, what? Allowed for the user to give more of a response about how we can make things better for them, how we can increase the experience. And this was the final questionnaire, so after they've used both sites, they got to kind of compare and contrast both of the sites. So they were able to see A and Y and explain why they liked it better. So that also helped with really gathering the user experience of the 2 sites. So the results I have were that Site A was proved to be much more user-friendly than Site B, and participants usually favored one site and all the content. So if they prefer Site A, they prefer Site A overall for the content, and visually they preferred it. And participants did report feelings of familiarity, intuitiveness on one of the 2 sites, usually referred to Portal, said that it felt a lot like Portal, which I thought was a very strange response given the site, but that was the one that they referred to. So this is a graph of the overall site preference. In blue you can see A, that was at 73%, and B is in orange at 23%, and people preferred the site the same at 4%. And so clearly A was the majority, however not 100%. So visual preference was split pretty much down the middle. A was at 45% and B was at 50%, and the same was at 5%. The reason that people preferred Site B visually more was because of the yellow bar, and they thought it looked prettier, and it was aesthetically pleasing, which is, yes, very funny. And then overall content preference, people, again, for Site A, the navigation really came into key here. People really like to be able to see that site structure. B was only preferred 4%, and the same 32%. Some people didn't understand that the content had changed, so they weren't really sure. They just thought they were all the same. And so the individual task easiness was recorded. That was the question on a scale of 1 to 7. How easy is it to complete this task? And Site A had statistically significant reports of being easier than Site B. And the number of times participants have made a suggestion to make a task easier was also recorded. So this is the average task easiness. We can see Site A and Site B's results. Again, this is on a scale of 1 to 7. So Site A was more significant in having an easier user interface. And then this is the task and suggestion rates. So as I said before, we had on a scale of 1 to 7, how easy is this? And then there's a question about, is there any way we can make this easier? So each there's 88 tasks on each site that was completed. So 16 of the 88 times participants reported a way to make the site easier or a task easier, and 40 as opposed to the 41 on site B out of 88. So there's a difference between 18 and 47%, which is pretty big. So these are some concluding thoughts, what I kind of gathered from this research. This tested both usability and user experience, as you can see through the way the questions were phrased and some of the responses we got. Participants did respond to how easy they thought the task was and how usable it was. There's a lot of, I could see some visible frustrations when going through some of the navigational techniques when trying to find and complete some of these tasks. There was an overwhelming support of Site A as opposed to Site B in all the categories, while not always represented in the data. Through the comments, the additional comments, that was often represented. And then, although I did not officially time anybody because I didn't want to put anybody under pressure, me sitting there watching them was enough. They seemed to move through Site A just a little bit faster than Site B, regardless if they had started with Site A or Site B first. And like I said, there was some frustration when working with navigation, particularly in Site B. A lot of people are using the back button on their browser to go back to previous sites. And so even though that Site A was particularly built off of what we consider to be very user-friendly, it still did not present 100% results of everybody liking this. And this makes sense. Not everybody's gonna have the same experience, not everybody's gonna like the same things. So we're still not producing unanimous decisions, but we are producing higher producing. And then these results also show how quickly these trends can change. Most of these trends that I got or suggestions on how to make things user-friendly came within the last 5 years. However, web moves so quickly. It changes every 5 weeks practically. So we have to really keep up, and that can make user experience hard because we can't always keep up with the trends or have these studies out fast enough. And so universally defining user experience and usability together will help take a lot of guesswork out of how to test for these features and how we go about trying to optimize our websites. And so implications, this really supports like getting early, frequent, and different opinions from all of our users. Really having those focus groups work together with us. And it supports having them being actively engaged. It's not worth it to have a focus group that never gives you responses back. That's really frustrating and it doesn't provide any help for you. And then this can actually easily transfer to the development of different things. So software, operating systems, and mobile applications could be further beneficial of these kind of testing techniques. And some further work I would like to do is looking at some more complex sites that are larger and see how, this was a 10-page website just about. So working at 100 pages and seeing how those navigational techniques can also be brought to better user experience. And I would really like to have a focus group and worked with them throughout the year and through the development of this process. It just wasn't feasible, but doing that would also be something I would really like to do, and have repeated testing of them to see, gathering their feedback, using that feedback to make the site better, and then presenting it to them again, see how that worked. That.
Questions for Emily?
I actually do have one question.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. You said that you did all your testing, all your